Hey Seekers, today we are reading from Matthew chapter 20 verses 1 through 16. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace and said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right.' So they went. When he went out again about noon and 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock, he went out and found others standing around. And he said to them, 'Why are you standing here idle all day?' They said to him, 'Because no one has hired us.' He said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard.' When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, 'Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first.' When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now when the first came, they thought that they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, 'These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat?' But he replied to one of them, 'Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last." A little background on this passage that I think is important in the message that Jesus is trying to get across to us. He's telling this parable so that the disciples may understand the importance of discipleship and being a servant of God. In those days when the harvest was ready, workers would go to the market square in hopes of getting hired for a day's wage. The typical workday was from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and the day was broken up by 3 hours. So the hope of the workers would be that they would get hired right at 6 so they can get the full day's wage. But let's say you didn't get hired at 6, you could get hired at 9 or 12 or 3, but your pay would be adjusted. In this parable, there were some people who even got hired an hour before the end of the day. The reason that Jesus is telling this parable is because his disciples seem to have some wrong motivation. The original 12 disciples were the first to follow Jesus. It says that Peter dropped his nets and immediately followed him. And in chapter 19 of Matthew, Jesus has the interaction with the rich young ruler, where Jesus tells him, in order to be in the kingdom, you have to sell everything. But the man was unable to do so. Jesus says it is difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And the disciples then said to him, "Well, then who can be saved?" Jesus replies, "With man it is impossible, but with God all things are possible." And of course, in Peter fashion, he says, "See, we have left everything and followed you. What then will we have?" Peter exposed something about himself, and Jesus immediately responds with this parable. What is our motivation for serving God? Is our motivation about getting the most rewards? I often hear those televangelists talk about people giving so that they can receive tenfold from God. Is serving God about recognition? Do I want to tell other people about God because it gives me a good name or it shows what a good person I am? We have people, as people who are servants of God, we've got to be able to decipher what our motivations are. William Blake wrote, "This life's dim windows of the soul distorts the heavens from pole to pole and leads you to believe a lie when you see with and not through the eye." When we are looking at rewards and doing good just for those rewards, we may have to realign our motivations. Our eyes are able to see what we want, but what we want should come from our soul, not from these external things. Jesus basically tells us that our motivation should be about gratitude. G.K. Chesterton said, "Gratitude is the mother of all virtues." You see, in the kingdom, Jesus lets it be known that all things come from God. Our service is to God because we are grateful for the blessing of his grace. Let me give you an example. Let's say that I was walking in the woods and I fell into a giant pit. And then a few hours later, someone else falls. And a few hours later, someone else falls. And each person that fell injures themselves on the way down. Finally, someone comes and throws a rope. One by one, I helped get them tied up and pulled out of that pit. Once everyone is rescued, do you think I would give the person who threw the rope a hard time because I was the last to be pulled from the pit? Would it even matter who was pulled first? Because we are all rescued and everyone can get home to their families. Thankfully, I wasn't injured on the way down, so I was able to help those that did injure themselves. You see, God is the one doing the saving. And instead of searching for a reward because I was the first one that fell in the pit and helped everyone else, we should be grateful to God for saving us all, for saving us at all. Kierkegaard, who was a philosopher, said, "I am a poor wretch whom God took charge of, and for whom he has done so indescribably much more than I ever expected, that I only long for the peace of eternity in order to do nothing but thank him." We should have no envy over others because of the rewards that they have, because all blessings come from God. We should be constantly thanking God for our blessings he has given us and them. This should motivate us even more to serve him. Amen.